The message arrived on a Tuesday morning, crackling through every radio telescope, satellite dish, and communication device on Earth simultaneously. It was impossible to ignore, impossible to shut off, and impossible to misunderstand. Greetings, inhabitants of the third planet from the star you call Sol. You have been selected for membership in the Galactic Council of Civilizations. A representative will arrive in 72 of your hours to escort your delegation to the council chambers. Prepare your finest ambassadors. The galaxy awaits. Dr. Sarah Chun, head of the SETI Institute, stared at her computer screen in disbelief. Around her, the control room buzzed with activity as technicians scrambled to record and analyze the transmission. The message had come in perfect English, but similar reports were flooding in from around the world. The same message had been delivered in every human language simultaneously. "This is it," she whispered to her colleague, Dr. Martinez. "First contact. After all these years of searching, they found us." Within hours, the United Nations had convened an emergency session. World leaders argued over who should represent humanity, while scientists debated the implications of interstellar diplomacy. The media went into overdrive, with news anchors struggling to maintain composure while reporting the most significant event in human history. President Walsh addressed the nation that evening, her voice steady despite the chaos surrounding her. "My fellow Americans and citizens of the world, we stand at the threshold of a new era. Humanity has been invited to join something far greater than ourselves. We will send our best and brightest to represent not just our nations, but our entire species." The delegation was chosen with careful consideration. Ambassador Rebecca Thompson, a veteran diplomat with decades of experience in international relations. Dr. James Wheeler, a linguist specializing in communication theory. Dr. Priya Patel, a physicist who had spent her career studying the cosmos. And Captain Michael Torres, a former astronaut who had commanded 3 missions to Mars. They had barely 2 days to prepare for a journey beyond their wildest imagination. The alien ship arrived precisely 72 hours after the message, appearing in Earth's orbit without any fanfare or visible means of propulsion. It was massive, easily the size of Manhattan, and shaped like a crystalline flower with petals that seemed to shift and change color in the sunlight. No human technology could have detected its approach. A smaller craft detached from the mothership and descended to the United Nations headquarters in New York. The being that emerged was humanoid but clearly not human, tall and slender, with skin that shimmered like oil on water and eyes that held depths of ancient wisdom. It wore robes that seemed to be made of starlight itself. "I am Zephyr of the Andorian Collective." The being spoke, its voice melodious and somehow heard directly in the minds of those present. "I will be your guide to the council chambers. Are your representatives prepared for departure?" The 4-person delegation stepped forward, their hearts pounding with excitement and terror in equal measure. They had trained for space travel, but nothing could have prepared them for this moment. "We are ready," Ambassador Thompson said, her diplomatic training helping her maintain composure. "It is an honor to represent humanity." Zephyr's features seemed to shift in what might have been a smile. "The honor is ours. Come, the council awaits." The journey to the council chambers took 3 days, though time seemed to flow differently aboard the alien vessel. The ship moved through what Zephyr called folded space, allowing them to traverse distances that would have taken human technology thousands of years to cover. During the journey, Zephyr explained the nature of the Galactic Council. "We are a confederation of 2,347 civilizations," it said as they sat in a lounge that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "Species from across the galaxy, united in the pursuit of knowledge, peace, and mutual prosperity." Dr. Patel leaned forward eagerly. "How long has the council existed?" "By your measurements, approximately 50,000 years. We have watched your species with great interest, particularly your rapid technological advancement and your unique approach to problem-solving." Captain Torres frowned. "Unique how?" Zephyr's expression became difficult to read. "You will understand when you address the council. Your species has qualities that others find remarkable." The council chambers were beyond magnificent. Suspended in space near the galactic center, The structure was a sphere of impossible size, its surface covered in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Inside, the main assembly hall stretched for miles in every direction, with seating for millions of representatives from across the galaxy. As the human delegation entered, a hush fell over the assembly. Thousands of different species turned to look at them, beings of crystal and light, creatures that existed as pure energy, entities that defied every law of physics the humans thought they understood. The council leader, a being that appeared to be made of living starlight, rose from its position at the center of the chamber. When it spoke, its voice resonated through the minds of every creature present. Welcome, representatives of humanity. We have brought you here to offer your species membership in our great alliance. But first, we must hear from you. Tell us of your world, your people, your achievements. Help us understand what humanity would bring to our council. Ambassador Thompson stepped forward, her prepared speech ready. She spoke of human art and culture, of scientific achievements and technological progress. She described humanity's journey from caves to space stations, from scattered tribes to a global civilization. Dr. Wheeler followed, discussing human languages and communication, the rich diversity of human expression and thought. Dr. Patel presented humanity's scientific discoveries, from the laws of physics to the mapping of the human genome. The council listened politely, but the humans could sense a growing restlessness in the assembly. They had heard similar presentations from thousands of other species over the millennia. Then Captain Torres stepped forward. Unlike the others, he abandoned his prepared remarks. "You want to know what makes humanity unique?" he said, his voice carrying across the vast chamber. "We're stubborn. We're contradictory. We fight among ourselves constantly, yet we'll drop everything to help a stranger in need. We create beautiful art and terrible weapons, sometimes in the same day." The chamber grew quiet, sensing something different in his words. "We've been to our moon not because we had to, but because we wanted to. We've sent machines to other planets just to see what's there. We write stories about talking animals and impossible worlds, then spend our lives trying to make those stories real. We argue about everything, but we also work together in ways that surprise even us." He paused, looking around at the sea of alien faces. "We're not the strongest species or the smartest or the most advanced, but we're the species that looked at the stars and said, 'Someday.' We're the species that takes the impossible and makes it inevitable. We're the species that never gives up, even when giving up would be the logical thing to do." The silence that followed was profound. Then, slowly, the council leader spoke. "You speak of determination, of what you call stubborn persistence. Can you provide an example?" Captain Torres smiled grimly. "My great-grandfather was told he'd never walk again after an accident in a factory. He not only walked, he ran marathons. My grandmother was told she was too poor to go to college. She became a doctor. My father was told humans would never reach Mars. He was part of the first colony mission." "And what," asked a crystalline being from the Tau Ceti system, "would humanity do if faced with an impossible challenge?" "We'd complain about it, argue about the best way to solve it, probably make a few mistakes along the way," Torres replied. "But we'd solve it. We always do." The council leader's form pulsed with what might have been amusement. "Indeed, we have observed your species for some time. Your wars, your conflicts, your seemingly endless capacity for both creation and destruction. Most species see these as weaknesses. Maybe they are," Torres admitted. "But they're also our strengths. We don't accept limitations. We don't accept impossible. We're too stubborn to know when we're beaten." The vote was unanimous. Humanity was accepted into the Galactic Council. But as the delegation prepared to return to Earth with the good news, Zephyr approached them with a troubled expression. "There is something you should know," the being said quietly. "The Council has been facing a crisis for the past 1,000 years. We have achieved peace, prosperity, and knowledge beyond measure. But we have also achieved stagnation." Dr. Patel frowned. "What do you mean?" "We have solved most of the galaxy's problems. War is virtually unknown. Disease has been conquered. Poverty eliminated. Death itself is optional for most species. We have created a perfect society. That sounds wonderful, Ambassador Thompson said, though she sensed there was more to the story. It is, Zephyr agreed. But perfection has a price. We have become comfortable, complacent. We face no challenges, overcome no obstacles. We have forgotten how to grow, how to change, how to dream of something better. The being's form shimmered with sadness. Many species have simply stopped. They exist in perfect contentment, but they no longer truly live. They have achieved everything they ever wanted, and in doing so, they have lost the desire to want anything more. Captain Torres understood immediately. You brought us here because you thought we might shake things up. We hoped that humanity's unique perspective might help us remember what we have forgotten. Your species has a gift for finding problems where others see only solutions, for seeing opportunities where others see only obstacles. The humans exchanged glances. They had expected to learn from the galaxy's advanced civilizations, not to teach them. What kind of problems? Dr. Wheeler asked. Zephyr gestured toward the viewing port, where the lights of countless civilizations twinkled across the galaxy. Look at them. Billions of worlds, trillions of beings, all living in perfect harmony. No conflicts to resolve, no mysteries to solve, no frontiers to explore. They are dying of contentment. And you think we can help? Ambassador Thompson asked. Your species has never been content. Even when you achieve your goals, you immediately set new ones. You are perpetually dissatisfied, always reaching for something more. To most species, this seems like a flaw. To us, it now seems like salvation. The humans returned to Earth with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. They had been accepted into the Galactic Council, but they also carried the weight of a tremendous responsibility. Humanity wasn't just joining an alliance of civilizations, they were being asked to save it from itself. The integration process began immediately. Human scientists worked alongside alien researchers. Human artists collaborated with beings of pure creativity. Human philosophers debated with minds that had pondered existence for millennia. But it was the questions that humans asked that truly began to change things. Why do you do it that way? Became a common refrain in council meetings. Have you tried this approach? What if we're wrong about this? Couldn't we do better? At first, the other species were politely confused by humanity's constant questioning of established systems. These were solutions that had worked perfectly for thousands of years. Why change them? But slowly, some began to see the point. Perfect solutions might not be the best solutions. Stable systems might not be the most beneficial systems. Contentment might not be the highest goal. The change started small. A few species began experimenting with new forms of art, new ways of thinking, new approaches to old problems. Then more joined in. Soon, entire civilizations were reevaluating their assumptions, questioning their methods, dreaming of new possibilities. The galaxy that had been quiet for so long began to buzz with activity again. Not the frantic activity of war or conflict, but the productive energy of growth and discovery. Species that had been content to exist began to truly live again. But with change came challenges. Some civilizations struggled to adapt to the new dynamic. Others embraced it too enthusiastically, creating problems where none had existed before. The galaxy experienced growing pains as it rediscovered its capacity for both progress and failure. The council meetings became more heated, more passionate. Debates that had been settled for centuries were reopened. Decisions that had been made by consensus were questioned and reconsidered. The perfect harmony of the galaxy was replaced by something messier, more chaotic, but also more alive. And at the center of it all were the humans, asking their endless questions, proposing their impossible solutions, refusing to accept that anything was truly impossible. 5 years after first contact, Ambassador Thompson stood before the full council assembly to deliver humanity's first major address as a member civilization. When we first arrived here, she began, we were in awe of what you had accomplished, a galaxy at peace, civilizations working in harmony, problems solved that we couldn't even imagine. We felt honored to be included in such a perfect society. She paused, looking out at the thousands of representatives from across the galaxy. But we've learned something important in our time here. Perfection isn't an achievement. It's an ending. When you solve all your problems, you stop growing. When you answer all your questions, you stop learning. When you achieve all your dreams, you stop dreaming. The chamber was silent, but it was the silence of attention, not indifference. Humanity's gift to the galaxy isn't our technology or our art or our science. It's our refusal to be satisfied. Our inability to accept that good enough is ever good enough. Our stubborn insistence that there's always something more to discover, something better to achieve, something impossible to make possible. She smiled, remembering Captain Torres's words from their first address to the Council. We're not the strongest or the smartest or the most advanced species in the galaxy, but we're the species that looks at perfection and asks, what's next? We're the species that takes your solved problems and asks, but what if we're wrong? We're the species that never stops reaching for the stars, even after we've reached them. The applause that followed was unlike anything the council chambers had heard in centuries. It wasn't the polite acknowledgement of a well-delivered speech, but the passionate response of beings who had rediscovered their capacity for wonder. As the humans left the chamber that day, they could feel the change in the galaxy around them. The silence that had marked the council for so long was gone, replaced by the beautiful noise of civilizations learning to dream again. The galaxy was no longer perfect, but it was alive, and in the end that made all the difference. Dr. Sarah Chun, now Director of Interstellar Relations, stood in her office overlooking the sprawling complex that had once been the SETI Institute. Through her window, she could see the construction of humanity's first interstellar embassy, a joint project with 17 different alien species. Each had contributed their unique architectural styles, creating a building that was both beautiful and utterly impossible by the standards of any single civilization. Her communication device chimed with an incoming message from the Galactic Council. The frequency of these calls had increased dramatically over the past decade as more and more civilizations requested human consultants to help them rediscover their potential, as they put it. Dr. Chan, came the familiar voice of Zephyr, though the Andorian had taken on a more energetic tone over the years. We have a situation developing in the Vega system. The crystalline collective has been in peaceful meditation for 3,000 years, but they've suddenly begun experimenting. Sarah smiled. Experimenting how? They've started creating art. Not just their traditional harmonic resonance patterns, but actual physical sculptures. Some of their creations are so unusual that they're causing what they call aesthetic disruption among their population. They're requesting human guidance on how to handle creative chaos. I'll send a team, Sarah replied, though I suspect they'll figure it out on their own. They usually do once they get started. It was true. The pattern had repeated itself across the galaxy over the past decade. Civilizations that had been static for centuries or millennia would suddenly begin experimenting, creating, questioning. The initial disruption was often uncomfortable, but it invariably led to periods of unprecedented growth and discovery. The methane breathers of Titan VII had developed entirely new forms of mathematics after a human mathematician asked them why they assumed certain equations were unsolvable. The photonic entities of the nebula cluster had begun composing symphonies of light after a human composer suggested that music didn't have to be limited to sound waves. The ancient ones of Proxima Centauri had emerged from their million-year slumber to investigate human claims that consciousness might be more complex than they had originally calculated. There's something else, Zephyr continued. The Council has been monitoring the effects of what we're calling the human phenomenon. The rate of technological advancement across the galaxy has increased by 300% in the past decade. New art forms are emerging daily. Philosophical movements that we thought were extinct are experiencing revivals. We're seeing interspecies collaborations that would have been unthinkable before. Sarah nodded. And the problems? Oh, those two. The warrior clans of Epsilon Eridani have begun competing in something they call extreme engineering, trying to build the most impractical structures possible just to see if they can be done. The peaceful gardeners of Kepler 442b have started what they call aggressive botany, creating plants that are apparently designed to be as difficult to grow as possible. And don't get me started on the logical machines of Wolf 359. They've developed what they call recreational paradoxes and spend their time trying to create logical contradictions for fun. Sounds like the galaxy is learning to play, Sarah observed. Exactly. And it's wonderful and terrifying in equal measure. We've had more genuine crises in the past 10 years than in the previous 1,000. But we've also had more genuine breakthroughs, more innovation, more life. After the call ended, Sarah walked to her window and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, trillions of beings were discovering what it meant to be dissatisfied again, to want more, to dream of the impossible. It wasn't always comfortable, but it was necessary. Her thoughts were interrupted by her assistant, Dr. Kim Park, who had been part of the second wave of human ambassadors to the galaxy. Dr. Chun, we've received an interesting proposal from the Galactic Council. They want to establish what they're calling human centers on major worlds throughout the galaxy. Places where beings can come to learn about questioning things, apparently. Sarah laughed. They want to institutionalize human stubbornness? Seems like it. They've developed a curriculum they call applied dissatisfaction and constructive disruption. They want humans to teach courses in how to be unreasonably optimistic and finding problems in perfect solutions. What do you think? Dr. Park smiled. I think we should do it, but not the way they want. We shouldn't teach them to be like us, we should teach them to be like themselves, but more so. Every species has their own way of being dissatisfied, their own way of pushing boundaries. We just need to help them remember what that looks like. Sarah nodded approvingly. That was the kind of thinking that had made humanity valuable to the galaxy, not just solving problems but reframing them entirely. Set up the meetings, she said, and make sure we include representatives from some of the species that have been most affected by the changes. They'll have insights we don't. As Dr. Park left to make the arrangements, Sarah's communication device chimed again. This time it was Captain Torres, now Admiral Torres, calling from the joint Human-Alien Research Station orbiting Proxima Centauri. Sarah, you need to see this. His voice was filled with excitement. The Ancient Ones didn't just wake up. They've been working on a project. They've been trying to figure out what lies beyond the edge of the galaxy. They want to know what's out there, past the boundaries of everything we know. Sarah felt a familiar thrill of anticipation. And they've found something, or rather, they've found nothing. But they think the nothing might be something. They want to organize an expedition to investigate. They're calling it the Impossible Mission, and they want humans to lead it because, and I quote, "You're the only species foolish enough to try." Sarah looked out at the stars again, but this time her gaze went beyond them, toward the vast unknown that lay at the edge of everything. The galaxy had spent 50,000 years achieving perfection within its own boundaries. Now it was ready to look beyond those boundaries, to seek out new impossibilities to make possible. "Tell them yes," she said. "Tell them we'll do it. I thought you might say that. There's just one problem, it's going to take us outside the galaxy entirely. We might not come back." Sarah smiled. "Michael, when has that ever stopped us?" His laughter echoed across the light years between them. "Never. I'll start assembling the team. This is going to be interesting." As the call ended, Sarah realized that this was just the beginning. Humanity hadn't just joined the Galactic Council. They had awakened something that had been sleeping for millennia. The galaxy was no longer content to simply exist within its own borders. It was ready to explore, to discover, to reach for something beyond even its own vast expanse. The silence that had once characterized the galaxy was gone forever, replaced by the sound of civilizations asking the most human question of all, "What's next?" And in the vast darkness beyond the galactic rim, new impossibilities waited to be discovered. The harmony of questions, humanity's contribution to the naming convention, was unlike any vessel ever constructed. Built through the combined efforts of 47 different species, it represented not just advanced technology, but a new philosophy of exploration. Where previous galactic vessels had been designed for safety and efficiency, this ship was designed for the impossible. Admiral Torres stood on the bridge, surrounded by beings from across the galaxy who had volunteered for what the media was calling the ultimate leap into the unknown. The crew included Zephyr, who had become something of a specialist in human-influenced missions. Resonance of Deep Thoughts, one of the ancient ones who claimed to remember the galaxy's formation. Flux, a photonic entity who existed partially outside normal spacetime. And Dr. Elena Vasquez, a human xenobiologist who had spent the last 5 years studying life forms that shouldn't exist according to conventional science. Final systems check, Torres announced. Around him, instruments created by civilizations across the galaxy hummed with activity. The ship's drive system was based on principles that 3 different species had insisted were impossible until they started working together to build it. Navigation systems show we're at the Galactic Rim, reported Lieutenant Commander Chun, Sarah's daughter, who had followed her mother into interstellar service. Beyond this point, our star charts become theoretical. Through the main viewer, they could see the edge of everything they had ever known. Behind them, the Milky Way spread out in all its spiral glory, for 100 billion stars representing countless worlds and civilizations. Ahead lay only darkness, with the faint glow of distant galaxies so far away they might as well have been dreams. Long-range sensors are detecting anomalies, reported Flux, its voice rippling through multiple dimensions. Structures that appear to be artificial, but following no known architectural principles. Zephyr's form shimmered with excitement. In 50,000 years of galactic civilization, no one has ever traveled this far. We are about to become the first beings to see what lies beyond our cosmic neighborhood. Dr. Vasquez looked up from her instruments. I'm reading energy signatures that don't match anything in our databases. Whatever's out there, it's not just empty space. Torres nodded. Take us beyond the rim. Let's see what impossible things are waiting for us. The ship moved forward, crossing an invisible boundary that no galactic citizen had ever crossed before. Immediately, their instruments began registering readings that challenged everything they thought they knew about physics. Gravity is wrong here, Chun reported, frowning at her displays. It's not following inverse square law. It's almost like space itself has different rules. Time dilation effects are inconsistent, added the ship's crystalline navigator. Chronometers are showing different rates of passage depending on their location within the ship. But it was Resonance of Deep Thoughts who made the most startling observation. The Ancient One's consciousness touched the ship's sensors, extending their perception far beyond normal capabilities. There are structures ahead, it announced, its ancient voice carrying notes of wonder. But they are not built in 3 dimensions as we understand them. They exist in more directions than should be possible. On the main viewer, something began to resolve out of the cosmic darkness. At first, it looked like a massive space station, but as they drew closer, it became clear that it was something far more complex. The structure seemed to fold in on itself, existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. It was beautiful and impossible and somehow familiar. Are we looking at ruins? Dr. Vasquez asked. No, Flux replied, its photonic form pulsing with realization. We're looking at a work in progress. Someone or something is building this. As if responding to their observation, lights began appearing throughout the structure. Not the steady glow of technology, but patterns that seemed to communicate meaning directly to the mind. The patterns were complex, shifting, and somehow welcoming. We're receiving a transmission, Chun announced. But it's not coming through normal communication channels. It's being projected directly into our consciousness. The message, when it came, was not in words but in pure understanding that transcended language barriers. Welcome, children of questions. We have been waiting. Torres felt the hair on the back of his neck stand up. Waiting for us specifically? For those who refuse to accept limitations. For those who look at perfection and ask, what's next? You are not the first to make this journey, but you are the first from your galaxy to arrive while still asking questions. Dr. Vasquez leaned forward. You're saying others have been here before? Many others. From galaxies near and far. But most arrive only after they have answered all their questions, solved all their problems, achieved their version of perfection. By then, They have nothing left to learn, nothing left to discover. They observe, they catalog, and they return home unchanged. Zephyr's form brightened with understanding. But we're different. We're still growing, still learning. Yes, your galaxy has awakened from its long contentment. This is unusual. Most civilizations achieve peace and remain peaceful until the heat death of their stars. Your species has introduced something we have not seen in eons, the courage to be dissatisfied with satisfaction. The structure ahead of them continued to grow and change, revealing levels of complexity that seemed to expand with observation. It was less a building than a living embodiment of possibility itself. What is this place? Torres asked. A nexus, a meeting point for those who have looked beyond the boundaries of their own existence and chosen to keep looking. We are the cultivators, beings from the first galaxies to form after the universe began. We have spent billions of years tending to the growth of consciousness, nurturing the development of species that might one day ask the questions that we ourselves can no longer think to ask. Resonance of deep thoughts pulsed with ancient recognition. You are gardeners of awareness itself. In a sense, yes. We plant seeds of curiosity, tend the growth of wonder, and hope that someday, someone will surprise us with a question we haven't considered. Your galaxy has done exactly that. Chen looked puzzled. What question have we asked that you haven't considered? But what struck the galactic delegation most was what these beings had in common. They were all still searching, still wondering, still pushing against the boundaries of what they thought possible. This is incredible, Dr. Vasquez breathed as they were led through a chamber where beings from dozens of different realities were collaborating on what appeared to be the construction of new universes. They're not just exploring reality, they're creating it. Their guide, one of the cultivators, communicated its amusement. Creation and exploration are the same thing, viewed from different perspectives. Every question asked brings new possibilities into existence. Every boundary pushed reveals new territories to explore. They were brought to a vast chamber at the heart of the structure, where representatives from countless galaxies and realities gathered in something resembling a cosmic parliament. But unlike the formal proceedings of the Galactic Council, this was a dynamic, ever-changing conversation where ideas flowed like living things. We invite your galaxy to join the greater conversation, their guide explained. Not as members seeking wisdom, but as contributors bringing new perspectives. Your gift for constructive dissatisfaction could help reinvigorate realities that have grown too comfortable with their own assumptions. Torres looked around at the assembled beings, creatures whose very existence challenged everything he thought he knew about life and consciousness. What would we be contributing to? The next phase of cosmic evolution. We have learned much about the nature of reality, but we suspect there are levels of existence we have not yet imagined. Questions we have not yet learned to ask. Impossibilities we have not yet made possible. Flux pulsed with excitement. You're talking about exploring beyond the known universe itself. Beyond, above, within, through directions that may not exist until someone thinks to look for them. We have mapped the possible. Now we seek to explore the impossible. The delegation spent what felt like days but measured as months learning about the greater conversation. They discovered that reality was far stranger and more wonderful than even their expanded galactic civilization had imagined. There were beings who existed in the spaces between dimensions, creatures who had evolved in the quantum foam that underlied reality itself, and entities who experienced time as a navigable landscape rather than a linear progression. But more importantly, they learned that their role would not be to simply observe and learn, but to actively participate in pushing the boundaries of existence itself. We need to return to the galaxy, Torres finally said during one of their planning sessions. Our people need to know about this. They need to be prepared for what comes next. Of course, their cultivator guide agreed. But know that this is not an ending, it is a beginning. Your galaxy has awakened to its potential for growth. Now it must learn to grow beyond the boundaries of its own reality. As the harmony of questions prepared to depart, its crew loaded with data and experiences that would challenge every assumption their civilizations had ever made, Zephyr approached Torres with a question that had been troubling it. Admiral, when we return and share what we've learned, it's going to change everything. Again. Some species might not be ready for the idea that reality itself is just the beginning. Taurus smiled. Zephyr, when has that ever stopped us? 5 years ago, the galaxy thought perfection was the goal. Now they're learning that perfection is boring. Next, they'll learn that reality is negotiable. And after that, they'll learn that after that is just another frontier to explore. The return journey took them back across the galactic rim and into familiar space. But they carried with them the knowledge that familiar was just another word for not yet expanded. They brought back proof that their universe was just one conversation in a greater dialogue, one question in an infinite inquiry. As Earth came into view, Taurus thought about how much had changed since that first message arrived on a Tuesday morning. Humanity had gone from listening to the stars to joining a galactic civilization to awakening that civilization to its own potential. Now they were about to take the next step, helping their galaxy join a conversation that spanned the entire cosmos. The message they transmitted as they approached Earth was simple but profound. Mission accomplished. The impossible has been achieved. Now we need to prepare for what comes next. Dr. Sarah Chun, now in her 70s but still sharp as ever, received the transmission in her office overlooking the interstellar embassy. She read it twice, then smiled and opened a communication channel to the Galactic Council. "Council leader," she said when the connection was established, "I hope you're sitting down. We need to talk about expanding our definition of everything." The galaxy was about to discover that even awakening from perfection was just the beginning of the journey. And somewhere in the space between realities, the cultivators watched and waited, tending their garden of consciousness and wondering what impossible questions would bloom next.